My name's Kyle Kushnir. I play the man in chair in the Drowsy Chaperone. So this is my chair, this is it here, my record player. So the play takes place in my living room, and I put on one of my favorite records, The Drowsy Chaperone, which is a show, fictional show from 1928. And when I put it on, it kind of comes to life in my apartment. So the audience sees the show kind of through my mind. Man in Chair's never seen it. He's never seen The Drowsy Chaperone, but I think he's listened to it countless times and has choreographed every second of it and sees it very vividly. So that's where the show comes from. It was a really kind of gradual process, like arriving at this man in chair. You know, we started rehearsals a long time ago. It was a long rehearsal process. But because of the nature of the show, you know, it was a lot of dancing and singing rehearsal, a lot of choreography, a lot of vocal work. So Roger, the director, and I would kind of sneak off to a corner together and work on some man in chair stuff. So it wasn't really until we got here in the theater that we could put it together. So a big part of it for me was Roger and I had talked about physically, you know, who is this guy, this man in chair, and he's a total recluse and stays in his apartment and listens to these old records. And I always saw him kind of as a mousy fellow, physically as a mouse. So that's where we kind of started. And the cardigan that I wear in the show was a big part of that. You know, putting that on and kind of inhabiting that. And for me, I'm always rolling up my sleeves on everything. So it's been a real challenge not to roll up his sleeves. And so it all kind of goes from there. Every time I get that urge to roll up a sleeve, I got to do something else, you know, and he's always got this cup of tea in his hand or the brandy. So that's kind of, the character kind of came about from these physical limitations of being in this chair the whole time. So vocally it had to be there because, you know, I don't get to walk around and express myself. And, you know, these little things that he does, he's got this cup all the time. And I think there's safety in that for him. And, you know, so it just kind of evolved over the rehearsal process. And he has this very distinctive laugh that he does that unfortunately is kind of carried over into real life. I try very hard not to. But that kind of developed here in the theater. Like it was a more recent development of the character, so. There's been a lot. I remember one rehearsal, Alison, who plays Janet, was late. She had to work, and so we were all rehearsing without her, and we were doing the Bride's Lament number with the monkeys, which was a huge Janet scene, and she wasn't here for it. And she came in the back of the theater, and she had her coat on and everything, and we were rehearsing up here, and she ran up, jumped up on stage, still had her coat and her scarf on, ducked under a monkey, into the middle where she was supposed to be, and then just opened her mouth and hit this note, you know, this huge belty note that she gets. And I was sitting here, which I do for the whole play, and I just remember looking at her thinking, oh my God, like, that's some serious talent. And it's a really talented cast all round, but you know, that moment kind of crystallized the kind of talent we have here. There was a weird moment with the lighting cue where the lights changed and there was a spotlight on me and the scene that was happening on stage was in darkness, and they kind of pushed their way through that, and I just thought, okay, well, we'll carry on with the next scene. And before we had a chance, Sylvia, our stage manager, came out from here, and I've, you know, in all the performances of anything I've ever done, the stage managers never come out on stage. So there was a moment of, oh my gosh, like, what's wrong? And she turned and looked at me, and she had tears in her eyes. And I thought, well, you know, there's something very serious happening. And she came over and kind of told me there'd been a medical emergency in the booth. And then she told the audience and said, you know, we're gonna pause while we deal with this and get medical help. Please bear with us. And that was all the information that I was given. And so off she went. And here I was sitting here, and I was still lit. And they brought the house up, and I thought, well, you know, at the beginning of Drowsy Chaperone, we break the fourth wall immediately. So there's already this kind of established relationship between man in chair and the audience. So there I was, and they were all looking at me, and I thought, oh, okay, well, you know, here we go. So, you know, just, I think, I don't know what it would be like to be in the audience for that. I think it would be an awkward moment for all of us, you know, when there's a medical emergency, you don't know what's going on, you don't know who it is, how serious it is. So people, I think, were afraid. They had been invited to get up and you know, go to the lounge and the bar and stuff, but people weren't quite sure how to react. So here I was, and as long as I'm going to stay here, I'm going to stay in character, and I've already established this relationship with the audience. So, you know, I went over and chatted with some people in the front row, and they started playing music, so we were, you know, trying to guess what song was playing and from what musical, and it was a pretty stressful 30 minutes, I think, but we made it through, all of us together. So. This will be my third show at Langham Court, and it's a, I think, totally unique place and really cool. You know, I think sometimes people have a preconceived notion of what community theater is, and what the limitations of community theater are. And for me, Langham Court, I think in the last couple of years, at least since I've been involved, has done a really great job. They've picked some really great plays that you don't expect for community theater, especially one that's been around this 86th year, right? And we have a very loyal patronage. They come to every show, regardless of what it is. And there's a reputation here, I think, for both quality, but also a certain style of show. And over the last few years, I think they've really expanded from that. But when people say community theater, Langham Court is like the epitome of that. They are a community. You know, if you're here on a show night and you go downstairs, you know, in our show, I think we have 17 actors, but there's, you know, a group of dressers that are here to help with some of the quick changes, and the costume ladies are here every night, and the sound people to hook up our microphones. And these are people, all of us are doing this on a volunteer basis, and these are people that are so excited to be here. I heard one of the dressers today before our show. She had yesterday off, and she said, I didn't know what to do with myself. She says, I know it was only a day. I missed it so much. I just wanted to come back. And they're so excited to help and to be a part of it. So there's 17 people on stage, and there's a cast of people behind stage, you know. So it's really community in the true sense. And you get to know people, you know. So this is my third show, and I've, you know, so there's different cast members, different production crew every time, but the members that come to every show, you get to know them, and they look forward to seeing what you're going to do next. And, you know, so it's, it really is a community theater. It's a pretty special place. And I think that, I really do think they've taken risks. You know, they did, the three shows I've been in, the Laramie Project, was a huge risk, I think, for Langham Court. And what I heard from a lot of audience members, they'd never seen anything like that here. You know, just in the subject matter and in the presentation. You know, it's a very modern play, and it's, you know, our set was kind of a black box and very different from what they're used to. And then Elizabeth Rex, you know, some of the subject matter in there, you know, just stuff they're not used to. And the Drowsy Chaperone, you know, is a huge show. It's a big show, and it's a really small space. So I think, you know, the board members and the community here that decide on these shows and that come together to put them on, you know, they're not complacent. They're very dedicated to putting on good theater. I started doing theater in high school. I remember I was in grade 9, and my parents were teachers at the high school, so not the school I was at. And they were doing West Side Story, and they needed more guys. So they asked me if I would come do it, and I was totally hooked. I went to theater school after high school. I went to Studio 58 for a year. And at the end of that, for lots of different reasons, I left school. Mostly I decided I didn't want to do this for a living. You know, theater, I think, is a horrible place to make a living. You know, there's not a lot of money in it, and you have to work very hard, and I kind of crave that Monday to Friday 9 to 5 lifestyle. So that's what I did. I left. And I moved to Victoria from Vancouver, and I didn't do anything for 10 years that I lived here. And a couple of years ago, so 2 years ago now, Eric Holmgren, who's an actor here, does a lot of stuff at Langham Court. and about town. He had emailed me and said, there's a show coming up called Boys in the Band, and he said, I really think you should audition for it if you're still interested in doing theater. And I thought, I'd love to, it had been so long. It was something I'd kind of pushed out of my life that I thought there wasn't room for anymore. And I did it, and it was wonderful. It was an incredible experience. So then followed that up coming here and doing the Laramie project, and I was hooked all over again. So it's been a really interesting journey for the last 2 years. I work, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, the way I want to, and learning that I can fit this in, that I can do this on a regular basis, and that there's room for it in my life has been really cool. I'm a banker. Yeah. Yeah, like the exact opposite. I think because of my day job, I crave, this kind of activity so much, creative outlet. I sit at the computer all day and input data and make financial decisions, which is great. I enjoy what I do, but there's not a lot of room for creativity in banking. So when that's done, when I leave the office, it's really nice to have something like this. I think just kind of carrying on with what I'm doing, there's a really great community outside of Langham Court. There's a really great community here in Victoria when it comes to theater, with Langham Court, CCPA, who, there's a lot of them in the show here. The Fringe Festival is huge, Theater in Canoe, Intrepid. There's some good theater happening in town. So I hope to kind of expand outside of Langham Court. In the next year and try something outside. Langham's great because they have a really, in a good way, a very easy kind of audition process where you don't have to really prepare anything. You come and you read from the script of the show that you're auditioning for. So for people that, if you don't have a headshot and a resume and 2 contrasting monologues prepared, you can come and audition for Langham Court. Which is important, I think. I think it makes them very accessible. So that's, kind of how I started here, it was a safe place to start that kind of process again. So for me, I'd really like to kind of branch out and see what else, some different companies in Victoria have to offer and see what Langham Court's got coming up next, like what's happening next year and see what shows there are to do. So as long as they're choosing, good theater, then, I'd love to be a part of it.